The girl thought that Yansung was surprised that he would not have more difficult trials. He closed his eyes and decided to try to believe that he was a real constellation without any doubt. After that, he seemed to have completely changed and felt how his body was reborn, and the world resonance was activated. His stereotypes and fears began to be destroyed, and the world accepted his cry as a constellation, invincible training master. He could use the power of the constellation. The girl was blinded by the glow that completely covered the room at that moment. In order to become a real constellation, Yansung first had to believe in it himself. Before their eyes, a new star was opening its eyes in the dark depths of the abyss. The next avatar tried to prove to his star that he was a professional in his field and began to compete with the monster. He dealt a lot of blows to this monster, using his most effective techniques, but all his attacks made no sense because the armor of this monster was very strong. To defeat him, it was necessary to use a much stronger weapon. While he was preparing for another attack, he received a message that the Constellation Invincible Training Master was following him. The Invincible Master of Training gave him his blessing. This shocked Yansung and gave him strength at the same time. He thanked him, and the avatar got a second breath. He simply could not disappoint the constellation that followed him. Yansung had a very strange feeling, as if he always knew how to do it, and it was nothing new. For him, using a small amount of his essence power, he could bestow a great blessing and even send a message. The girl didn't want to spoil his pleasure, but asked why he was communicating with someone else's avatar. He apologized and said that he just wanted to try out his new powers. The girl replied that everything was fine because they were in an alliance, but if it was an avatar from another constellation, then he would have problems. From this moment on, before doing something, he needs to think carefully. Avatars are the most important factor for the existence of a constellation. Any influence on other people's avatars can be considered a provocation. He could get the answer to any question just by thinking about it, the same with his other mistakes. He did not even realize that he was already a constellation, and he continued to move from one side to another in order to become stronger. Although he was lost and wandering in the abyss, he was helped by the thought that these were all trainings of the goddess. He even thought that the magic storm was just a convenient way to move around, as well as a training tool. He really didn't think about anything, and even if he did, he just considered it a wonderful study. The girl reminded him that the vision of the constellations is far and unsurpassed. She invited him to choose his avatar and focus on it, but the fact is that Yansung did not have an avatar. But then he thought and remembered his old friend Onyx, who became his avatar and was very grateful for saving his family. They were fine. He could also expand the range of his vision using the power of the essence. Also, he can restore his essence power, and you can accumulate it more than the limit allows. Therefore, you don't need to protect it. In this way, constellations can use their avatars to explore the abyss. You can also see through the eyes of your own avatars. With this ability, you can share vision between alliances. Since they were all members of the same alliance, he can share eyes with them. But there was a place where he couldn't use it, a place where horrors were imprisoned. He could hide the relevant areas if he didn't want them to be seen. It depended on the personal preferences of each constellation. They have the right to fully dispose of their territories. To meet Yansung, the girl sent Aroni to him because she was the best at controlling herself. It is very difficult for horrors to control their desires. He guessed what she was talking about when he remembered the strange behavior of one of the demons and one of the angels. The girl asked if the guy had any more questions that he would like answered, but he replied that everything was clear and thanked her for the explanation. She was pleased to meet a constellation that sincerely thanked her because, in the abyss, this is very rare, and everyone thought only for themselves. The girl added something else. Since he had only recently become a constellation, she asked him to have less contact with others. In a battle between constellations, the one with more avatars and greater essence power has the advantage. The place where Yansung arrived after long training is the beginning of the whole world. It is an abyss constellation. He decided to ask the girl if she had ever heard of another world, that is, the Earth. She thought about it and said that she once heard about it and guessed that it was a planet from another dimension. She heard that many different constellations want to open the gate there because there are many souls there, which are very rare in the abyss. He asked this because he himself was from the earth, and the girl thought that the gate between the earth and the abyss was already open. In this case, the girl understood that everything should turn into chaos. But Yansung replied that in reality, everything is not so bad, thanks to her explanation. The constellations that come to Earth only look at each other but do not compete because they will only weaken if they compete with each other and lose their advantage over others. Some wayward constellation could simply take control of the souls and defeat the competing constellations. So instead of just fighting, they decided to increase the number of their followers. Yansung was lucky that when the gate opened, there were relatively normal constellations nearby. Evil and cruel constellations will not find a compromise and will simply try to seize power by force. This was their nature, and they behaved this way even when they had something to lose and risked their reputation. The girl was sure that he was very nervous after leaving his native land for the incomprehensible, selfish constellations. She added that it would be nice to have constellations that were the souls of the earth in the alliance. Right in the middle of the conversation, Yansung closed his eyes and began to concentrate his energy. The girl and the kitten stood still and waited for what he wanted to do. He decided to get rid of his long hair because it was bothering him, and he was not used to it. His new friends watched intently as his hair flew all over the area. The reason why his hair grew so unexpectedly is that he accepted himself as a constellation, and the changes in his essence were reflected in his appearance. The girl thought that he made a decision to return to Earth no matter what and not forget his mortal origin, but that wasn't the point. It's just that his long hair really interfered with his training, and he wanted to become even stronger. That was his goal, to get better all the time. If the guy plans to return to Earth someday, the girl decided to give advice. Since the gates to the Earth are open and the nearest constellations are watching them, she thought that openly showing that he was a constellation was a very bad idea. Because even good creatures turn hostile against him. If these constellations are able to compete for the Earth, then they are much stronger than them. It does not matter how good a constellation he is, because they will not close their eyes to the fact that they can lose the soul that they possessed. She wanted Yansung to hide the fact that he was a constellation and not use the power of the essence. They would not look away from him if they noticed that the constellation had returned to Earth. He needs to mix with ordinary inhabitants of the Earth and, after that, quietly and carefully find friends among people, and they will become souls that accept his essence. Thus, the constellations on Earth will notice the disappearance very late. Yansung thought about it because he never planned to become an actor or a star, but the girl didn't mean that. It was enough for him to become a hero who destroys monsters. If you think about it, famous hunters also have fans. He forgot that he used to perceive Shikiri as a fellow hunter. Yansung then remembered that there was one constellation on Earth that knew of his existence. The girl said that it would be nice if it joined them. It wouldn't hurt them to increase the strength of the alliance. He immediately had a lot of questions. The girl was interested in whether she could trust this constellation and how she learned about him. It was a very long story, but Yansung decided to try to tell the story of how he fell into the abyss after meeting a benevolent goddess. He wanted to make it as short as possible and as simple. Also, Yansung did not want to harm the reputation of the benevolent goddess and, of course, his own. The girl said that it was a terrible story and immediately changed her attitude towards Yansung. Embellishing the story did not help in this case, but she replied that she had heard about this constellation even in the abyss. The possibility of seeing the future was not so often encountered. The girl added that she had heard that this is a constellation that constantly makes itself a laughing stock because it misunderstands its prophecies. It is very difficult to accurately predict the future, and what is the point of these predictions if you cannot benefit from them? Therefore, it was not very clear how she could help their alliance, considering how she tried to stop the evil constellations. She was most likely working with the other constellations. According to Yansung, this was enough to join their alliance, although she was naive enough. The kitten said if she agreed to share her visions with them, they could help decipher them and try to interrupt them. As a result, they gave Yansung permission to ask her to join their alliance. He was only worried about how she would react to him becoming an alliance. He needed to find a way to get in touch with her and asked if his friends could help. They did not have enough information to help him in his search for the goddess. Although Yansung woke up as a constellation and joined the alliance, it did not bring him any closer to returning to Earth. He had to find her, and because of this, he began to worry about whether he would be able to return to Earth in time. The avatars of the constellation of dreams and desires flew to Yansung and said that they would be happy to give him a tour of the host's territory. But the avatar began to wonder why he was doing it if he planned to return to Earth. He replied that he had important business left here. The kitten was preparing new equipment for him, and he should stay there until he finished. The avatar said that she was sure that this big catsith would make the gear legendary. The kitten was forced to cry and make this gear because earlier he said that he didn't like this particular gear. Yansung believed that this weapon and shield could fulfill his long-held dream. The angel asked what specific place he would like to visit because there are a lot of beautiful places in this area. But Yansung had one special thing he had heard about, the water play of enlightenment. The angel said it was a place for them to train to learn how to control their desires. Yansung felt that if he had to wait, then he must attend the training sessions which are only available in this area. The angel started to laugh and said that he really was a master of training. He had heard that many horrors used this place in the past, but since the master was born, it had been forbidden. It was because it is very dangerous. A lot of people go crazy during training. The essence of the whole training was to drink water from a well, but if it was really so, then it would not have been sealed. The more a person wanted to draw out the water, the harder the water became. One could try to meditate and get rid of one's desires, but the water did not become less. He was haunted by voices that said if he let go of the water, he would be able to return to Earth and visit his old gym, be able to taste spicy chili ramen, watch the movie about Batman and Superman. Yansung felt the touch of his ex-girlfriend, with whom they broke up because he spent a lot of time in the gym. He heard her talk about how they broke up on a bad note, but their love didn't end, and they still have feelings. She then said that they could be together again if he could let go of that rope. The members of the alliance watched his training. Although he is a master of training, it is very difficult for him. This well increased his desire, and the bucket became heavier and heavier. But since he was on a completely different level compared to the horrors, he persevered. He would at least not go crazy. The girl was very interested in what illusions confused him. She thought there was something unsurpassed, but Yansung was determined and continued to draw water. They could not believe that this was possible and how strong a person he was. He continued to train to pump up his muscles, using the power of his desires. He got rid of them in the same way. He was addicted to training. No wonder he became a star. They continued to watch him and couldn't take their eyes off him. The kitten said it looked unreal. An angel came to him and said that many horrors had gone mad trying to finish this training. She just wanted to ask if he was okay, but Yansung replied that he just found a very cool exercise machine. For the first time in a long time, he did not understand why no one could lift this bucket because the temptations were very weak. He considered Batman and Superman to be an overrated movie, and he hadn't tasted ramen in a long time because he had to watch his diet during training. And if we talk about the girl, then he had the consciousness for it, and even if they were together again, nothing would change in their relationship. These illusions were very weak for him. It was ordinary squats, only with weight. The girl was ready to bet that there are no creatures without desires. Constellations are no exception. The constellation was weaker in terms of restraining its desires, because why should a powerful being restrain itself? He had a very good base, and it wasn't just his fighting skills that she was talking about. But she didn't understand how it was possible for a constellation that was an ordinary mortal to possess such power. Yansung could do lightweight cardio if he cleared his heart and strength training if he let his heart run wild, and the rest of the time he rested and worked on tactics. He also sparred with Ironi. The girl thought that it would be problematic for him to stay in this area for a long time, but it seems that he had a very good time. He was a human army and martial artist, but he may also have the potential to grow avatars and build his kingdom because he was primarily a master of training. Although he was comfortable being alone and pumping his skills after training with him, Ironi became much stronger, and the girl was grateful for that. The kitten finished his work and swore he would never do anything like that again. He was shocked when he saw his weapon and armor ready. It seemed that this was the end of his carefree training. These were orichalcum utensils, which were created by the famous genius Constellation blacksmith. With such equipment, he could easily prepare any ingredient. The sharp blade could even be used as a weapon. Then he thought about it and decided, why not take this knife and try something? He swung and threw the knife inside of the Alliance members with all his might. The girl said that this knife was sharpened by a Constellation blacksmith, and if he does not handle it carefully, it will destroy everything around. After the nuts and bolts, they decided to get ready and put on their glasses before Yansung started testing the adamantium products. They stood in a corner before starting. Yansung looked at his friends. In order to test the devices, he needed to gather some Kai energy. Even a small amount of Ki was enough to create such a large explosion. The girl and the kitten seemed to be watching New Year's fireworks. Pieces of the floor flew up to them after the explosion. A large cloud of smoke was formed on the territory after the attack of the materialized Ki. Not a single scratch appeared on these devices. The kitten began to boast that these devices were stronger than magical armor. Yansung said that he would like to have more tools, but the kitten replied that it was the problem of the person who provided the materials for the product. The guy said he had no further comments and sincerely thanked him for the work. Yansung's short break in the world of horrors was over. Although he was a man when he entered, he left as a constellation. All the avatars begged him to return to their kingdom. They really liked his special recipe dishes. It turned out that the invincible master of training was remembered as a master of cooking. He prepared food for them with the help of new items. One of the dishes was bop with hydra. Everyone was surprised where he could get hydra meat to prepare this dish for them. Yansung asked to call all the avatars because he had a lot of hydra meat, so he cooked almost everything. Aroni began to taste first. The mistress told her that she could run away if she thought that she would not be able to eat it since the hydra meat contained deadly poison. Therefore, she could not expose her avatars to such danger. But Aroni was shocked at how delicious it was. This dish warmed her, and she felt herself gaining strength. A bunch of avatars also started asking to taste this delicious dish. The horror's obsession with bop caused chaos, and the situation could be resolved only after the hostess intervened. He was able to practice cooking and increase his essence power, but he was a little uncomfortable as a result. The avatars created chaos because of him. He realized that ruling the kingdom was much more difficult than he thought. Yansung reached the territory of plague and darkness. When he saw her, she looked very suitable for such a constellation. He thought maybe he could use some essence power to keep this evil guy from stressing him out. The guy hid his essence from the whole world and disappeared from the visibility zone of other constellations. The world became so quiet and peaceful after that. He couldn't believe that he was being swept away by the flood of messages from the constellations because he couldn't do such a simple action. Yuku's ordered all avatars to find the invincible training master, but he warned them not to fight him alone because they would never be able to defeat him.